Hey ladies, got a struggle? Need to vent? It's time to join your voice and get down to business with some critical thought, where like-minded ladies share their personal experiences to empower each other, using critical thinking to make wise decisions. And now, here's your host, Lady C.
I'm Lady C. Welcome to another episode of the Struggles of Jehovah's Witness Women. My upcoming guest is a local photographer in her area, and she's also got IMDb credits as an actor. She's a very busy person that sits on several nonprofit boards in her community. She's also a former Jehovah's Witness, and she actually served in Brooklyn, Bethel for 10 years. Her story, very intriguing, caught my attention in a blog post that I read several years ago, and it's part 1, 2, and 3. I have included a link in the podcast so that you can read more about her story yourself. She is not only courageous and captivating, but she is an inspiration to all of those that know her. Please join me in welcoming Mariuca. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Kathy. Thanks so much for having me.
We, as women in this religion, we all go through the same thing. Some of us go through different things than others because, you are with different people who have a different mindset about the religion. So, Mariuca, you're going to tell us about your experience, coming into the religion. You want to give us a little bit of history about your family and how you all became Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, my family became Jehovah's Witnesses in the very early 70s. And what happened was, when they were a very young couple with just a few young children, someone came to the door. And my mother was busy at the time, but said to the sister that came to the door, if you leave your phone number with me, I will give you a call and we can set up a time later on when we can talk. And so she did end up calling that sister, and then she ended up studying, and we moved shortly thereafter, but to the west side of town. But she started up her studies again, and then eventually she got baptized, and then shortly thereafter, so did my father. And so that was my my first contact with witnesses when I was about 5 or 6. And I guess I was so young that it wasn't as jarring if it had been than it would have been if I was older when it happened. But I do have a recollection of having less free time and then all of a sudden having to go to these pretty boring meetings. So.
What about your household? What was it like growing up in your house as one of Jehovah's Witnesses?
My family was pretty by the book. I would say they're pretty strict with their with following the witness teachings. They did. I mean, we had Watchtower studies where we invited other families over. This was in the 70s, and we visited Bethel frequently. In the mornings before school, we would have the daily text and Bible reading discussion. It was on a schedule where we had to be down at a certain time at the table, ready for it, at the table in our dining room and ready for it. So I would say, and we regularly participated in field service. My father was a ministerial servant and then an elder, and then my mother was a pioneer. So I would say we were pretty deeply involved in it. And I mean, we were by the book. If the Watchtower said this is what families should do, this is what you should do with your children, I mean, they did it. There was no slacking on any of that. We were pretty strictly involved with it. And I mean, I think my parents tried to they tried to balance it out and have us have fun too, but still there was, just by nature, there was kind of an oppressive nature of having to do all that, all the time. So,
Now, I understand you are the oldest of 4 children.
yes.
How did your siblings, adapt to this religion? I understand that you were really into everything because you were looking to go to Bethel. That was your goal, right?
Yes, it was. It
Yeah. How did
was.
your siblings feel about this religion?
I think that my siblings kind of fell in line. I think that because I was the oldest and I was very involved in it, I think that the way that my parents raised us kind of just made us all fall in line. My one of my siblings at Bethel for a number of years, and another one of my siblings also was a Gilead graduate and was in another country for several years. So I would say it affected us all in fairly the same way, where we were pretty involved with it. None of us just like rebelled from it as young people. So I think they just raised little Jehovah's Witnesses, and we didn't really question or anything. We just kind of did the things that they told us to do.
So when you first went to Bethel, what was your reaction?
When I first went, I was happy to be there because it had been a goal of mine, and I felt like I had overcome a lot of obstacles to get there as a woman. However, I will honestly say I had a lot of social anxieties, which I guess I had as a young person, but I kind of just forced myself out of it as far as going in service and all that sort of activity, being at meetings, being on assemblies. I was very nervous about it, but I did it. But when I went to Bethel, I think I was jarred by morning worship. I sat in lower dining room, and I don't know, there were maybe 1,000 people in that dining room, and to just in the morning, every single morning, just sit at a table with 10 people, sit in this ginormous dining room with just hundreds of people. I was stressed, and I know many a morning I sat at morning worship just trying to get my head together, and that didn't go unnoticed by my husband, that I wasn't exactly responding all the time the way I should, but it made me nervous. But I was happy to be there because I thought that was the best thing to do. I thought I was serving Jehovah in the best way. So at the time, I was happy to be there. Thought I was doing the best thing, but my initial reaction was a lot of social anxiety too.
Wow, I can only imagine because JT and we applied to Bethel, and we did not get accepted to go as a couple, and I believe we didn't get accepted because in my congregation I had expressed some concerns, about my living arrangements with my roommates, and I think the brothers thought maybe it would be better for me to start our marriage off outside of Bethel, which might have been a blessing in disguise.
Oh.
I don't think I could have done that.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were really good. They were really good brothers too, and very they were responsive to my concerns and my needs and stuff like that. Because even one brother told me, he goes, "Oh, you know what? I tell you what. Why don't you come off the pioneer list and go plan your wedding?" He said, because you only get married once. Wow. And he was like, go plan your wedding, enjoy yourself, and then come back on the list. So I think those brothers helped me out a lot. They helped me out a lot,
Yeah, because I think, if people were really in tune to our personalities, if they knew us, I think they would have an idea that although we had spiritual goals, that maybe we weren't being so balanced, and maybe with their experience and looking back, they could see, this is great and all, but don't miss out on, the important things of your life because.
That's true. Now, you said that you met your first husband, Charlie, on the job.
Yes.
In Detroit, you guys worked at the same place?
Yes.
So, were you guys about the same age?
Yes.
Okay.
He was like a year older than me.
Okay.
So yes, we're about the same age.
Okay. Now then Charlie goes off to Bethel. You mentioned that you had typed up his Bethel application because you
Yes.
worked at that job, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now tell me this. Who expressed an interest in who? You or Charlie?
I'm pretty sure that it wasn't me because I wasn't very forward. So I'm pretty sure it was him, but I think it kind of just organically grew into a relationship because of proximity. We went to pioneer school together. We were in the same congregation at a time. We had similar goals. So I think it just kind of happened that way. But I was never a very forward person, so I can't see myself having approached him because that just doesn't seem like something I would have done.
Okay.
Wow, that takes me back, but
But
yeah.
you know something? Weren't you were pioneering, right?
Yeah, oh yes.
Okay. So remember at Bethel, a lot of brothers, they did not want to date sisters that weren't pioneering.
True.
So was there a lot of sisters in your congregation pioneering?
Not young sisters, no. But then of course I was in Detroit and he was in New York, but I would say probably not young sisters, but there may have been in his hall in New York, because I think that whenever those guys would marry a girl from back home, there was a certain amount of resentment. I'm finding myself using these terms, sisters and whatever, and I'm so like far removed from it that it feels funny for me to say it, but I don't know how else to say it. I just have to say that because I don't even use that terminology anymore. But I'm using these terms because this is what we used at the time. But yeah, so these are very good questions. I never, some of these I've never been asked. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
But how did they treat you coming in as an outsider, so to speak, that you're not from New York City?
Yeah, so the aforementioned resentment, yeah, there was a little undercurrent of that. And we were in Bed-Stuy, and I think, I don't know how to say that. I just think that, yeah, there was a bit of resentment, and he was a very down home person, very down home with them. Whereas, I come across as more aloof. I guess I'm just, I really was more shy, especially when I was younger. I was very shy. That shyness came off as aloofness, though. And so I didn't get the love, that he experienced. Part of that was our personalities, but yeah, so there was a bit of that, but overall, they were nice. I mean, it was a very, very hospitable group of people. So I don't want to make it sound like they were not good people, but yes, there was a bit of an undercurrent of why did he go back home, and when we have great people here that he could have, gotten with. So
That's amazing. And, it's interesting, like that you said that about the people, because it's like a lot of people think, oh, we're just here to bash Jehovah's Witnesses and we want to just show you how mean the people are. But you do know, as well as I, that, we've had some very good friends.
oh
That,
yes.
people that I wish that I could still speak to because they were good people, just like
Yes.
we were.
Yes, I learned some very important life lessons that I still follow from people that were witnesses. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm not about bashing them. I think there are good people everywhere. And I think that a lot of witnesses are just good people. And they were good people in that circumstance. So yes, I acknowledge that. I mean, they were wonderful to me when I went there. But was there an undercurrent of a bit of, resentment? Of course, yeah.
How about right at Bethel? I mean, you're at your congregation in Bed-Stuy, but then you go back to Bethel. How are you received by the sisters at Bethel?
Well, just bear in mind that I was a dyed-in-the-wool witness, and, here this was just the epitome of what a witness is supposed to do. I loved it, and I felt loved. And my first year and a half or so, I was in the deluxe bindery, and it was fun, and I made some really good friends. So, I talked about the anxiety with morning worship and all, but actually in my work, I didn't feel that anxiety. It was a different kind of work. It was more manual, that first year and a half or so. But the people I worked with and the overseer that I worked for, good people. So, I mean, yeah, I feel bad now that I was working for free, working my life away there. So, that's the framework that I look at it in now. But I can't blame that on the people that were there. They were equally under that influence. But I loved my job. I loved what I did. And I think, to be perfectly honest, I was never a big fan of field service. And so to think that this could also be full-time service, and I didn't have to do the pioneering thing, and I was actually working harder there, but it was the kind of work I liked to do. I thought, this is a win-win situation, and I get to do that,
I'm glad to hear you say that, because, when you look at how much time you spent in this organization and you think about how much time you lost, and you're like, oh my God, I lost all this time. I was doing all these things. But then to hear you say, I enjoyed it, is a good thing to hear too, because at least you were getting a skill. Because weren't you doing some photography at Bethel as well?
No, I did. For the first year and a half, I was in the deluxe bindery, mostly doing shrink wrap. But no, I never did photography there. But I did do proofreading for a lot of the time that I was there, and I worked in the press room. But so no, I mean, none of those skills ended up translating into something that I could use on the outside. But and again, looking at it on the lens from now, all of it was a complete waste of my youth. I mean. But I'm just saying, looking at it from when I was there, how I felt great about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Until what happened with Charlie, I pretty much felt great about it.
Okay. Now you experienced the cold hand of steel via Watchtower. I don't want to go into a whole lot about your situation with Charlie, because I'm really recommending people to read the 3-part story on the internet that I'm going to include the link here on in this podcast. But can you just give us a little bit of brief, history about what transpired with you and Charlie?
Yeah, so I think after we'd been married about 6.5 or 7 years, he ended up hooking up with one of his coworkers, and then I guess after that there was a judicial committee and so forth, and all that's detailed in that story. But the thing that was different about it was that he did not get disfellowshipped. Neither of them got disfellowshipped. They got removed from Bethel, but not disfellowshipped. And because of the circumstances surrounding it, I guess I just I couldn't understand what had happened. And now, bear in mind, I was rather naive in that I actually thought that the organization was clean and that none of these sort of things really happened often. I knew they happened sometimes because I was at Bethel when similar things occurred. But I guess I didn't realize that people were doing these things and we're not disfellowshipped, that they could just be privately reproved or publicly reproved. I just didn't understand how all that worked, but I just knew that in the circumstance that happened there, it didn't seem right. I didn't understand how that could be right. And so that started me to really thinking about the whole organization, thinking about how, the men kind of look out for each other, and how as women, we're second-class citizens, particularly because I was not, it was up to them to decide if I was able to sit in on the meetings that discussed, when they met with my then husband, it was up to the men to decide if I was even to sit in on any of that, if I was to be privy to any of that. So I think that's what caused me the most issue, was that here all of these decisions were being made that affected me personally, but I was not even, I didn't even sit in when my husband discussed what happened. or why or how, or discuss the state of our marriage. I wasn't privy to those discussions, and I was only brought in a couple of times without him in the room, just for them to ask me specific questions that they felt had a bearing on things. But yeah, that whole situation really threw me for a loop and helped me to see the realities of the organization that I was involved in, that I was really a second-class citizen.
Mm-hmm.
So that I never recovered from that, really. I was still a witness for maybe 10 more years.
Your family, your father, your siblings, your mother, did they know what was going on with you and your husband? If they did, what kind of support did they give you?
Well, they did know, and you know how it is in the witnesses, like, people are very careful. You have to be careful about what you say. So let's say you don't like how something went down, but you're not going to speak against the organization. You know, it was the people at Bethel that handled it, that had the judicial committee. So, you know, I think people were careful to not say things that would sound like you were speaking against the organization. But no, they were in my corner. I mean, nobody was a fan of Charlie. And, you know, I had a leave of absence around that time, and I came back to Detroit and was you know, in Detroit for, I don't know, several weeks, just getting my head together. But so I can't say they weren't supportive at that time. I mean, they were, but what can you do? Your hands are tied. You know, what are you going to do? Mount some opposition against it? You know, you're pretty much just a sheep in this organization, where you're just, say yes to whatever the organization presents you with. So they were supportive to the extent that one can be supportive in a cult. But you know, what are you going to do? You know. So
Were they shocked? Was your father shocked that Charlie did not get disfellowshipped?
he probably was. I mean, again, he didn't like say it in that way to me. But yeah, I'm pretty sure quite a few people were shocked, even at Bethel. So yeah, I know for a fact that there was shock. But you know, it wasn't like, you know, again, he was careful to not say things that you're not supposed to say.
But you know what's interesting too? I'm gonna tell you something. When my husband was at Bethel, they knew a lot of stuff that happened at Bethel. And they were told, don't talk about this stuff outside of Bethel, because the friends in the congregation might not understand it.
Right.
So when I'm thinking about you and your family, I'm thinking about you guys have private conversations, but you just wouldn't let it be known that you had those little private conversations outside of the family. So it sounds to me like they were really toeing the line.
Yeah, just as I described, you know, even in our private conversations, I would say that no one stepped over the line as far as what they would say about the organization, you know? So yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly
we had all those conversations in my family. And my dad was not a witness when I was growing up, but we just had those conversations. We talked about what was wrong and what needed to be corrected, and we had those discussions. And that could have been the breakdown with you not being able to see the other side of other people in the religion, you know?
Yes, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But yeah, I think I probably heard more of more honest conversations from my friends at Bethel, who still were careful, but were more emotional about, you know, were more impassioned about what they had to say. Still, again, being very careful, but still saying, you know, that wasn't right. So, you know, that's what happens when you're indoctrinated. I mean, you're very careful, I guess, about what's said. And you know, keep in mind, I was still a Bethelite. I was still, you know, so yeah, I'm home and I'm getting my head together, but you know, I'm still here. I'm still a part of the organization in New York. So I think people would be, even my family would be pretty careful about what they say. and they knew I would have to carry on. So getting me riled up, wasn't gonna. Maybe they felt it wasn't gonna help the situation. I don't know. I don't want to presume what they were thinking. I only know what they were saying to me was tempered. I could tell it was tempered.
What kind of relationship did your mom and dad have?
Oh, they had with each other.
Yeah.
I would say they had a good relationship. What they presented to us was good. I never saw them argue. They never argued in front of us. Now, one could say that maybe they just didn't show us that, because I can't believe they didn't argue all that time. But they really were, those couples that you saw in the assembly demonstrations where there was mother, it wasn't this a fine meal, that's pretty much what I saw, so I wasn't prepared for having marital issues myself, because my parents are still together. They had a pretty good relationship. So yeah, I would say they had a good relationship. I don't know, from what I saw, in my 22 years living with them, that seemed to have a pretty good relationship.
Wow. Now, what kind of relationship did you have with Charlie?
Well, that's a complicated. We had what I thought was a good relationship. He wanted me to be more outgoing. I was very shy when we were together, and like I said, I had those social anxieties. He was very outgoing, very charismatic. His idea would be to get up and go to the library before morning worship so that we could do some personal study, maybe look at Strong's, is it Strong's Concordance and Vine's Expository? I don't know. I may have the terms crossed, but no, he was very into deep research and all that. So we spent, a lot of time doing that sort of thing. And we, some years got like pioneer hours while we're at Bethel. Well, at least auxiliary pioneer, I guess they called it then. So he was possibly more dyed-in-the-wool than my family, which I thought I wanted, as a young person. I got married when I was 22. I thought I just wanted the most spiritual man that I could possibly have. Not thinking that might not be a lot of fun, but, I was young and that's what I chose. So our relationship was, looking back, I can say it wasn't the best functioning relationship. And I can say that when you're living in a 400, or maybe it was smaller, 200 square foot room with paper thin walls, and are in this situation where you're living with thousands of people, not an ideal circumstance for a young marriage. So I thought it was great at the time, but again, I was indoctrinated, and did I really have a good idea of what a marriage should look like? In reality, no. I thought it should look like what was outlined in the Watchtower and or in the family book, and a lot of that was probably pretty superficial and not so realistic.
Did you and Charlie have any arguments?
Not so much. I'm not, it's interesting because, I've been divorced twice, but I can't say that I've had a lot of drama. There was some, but no, actually, Charlie would probably, if you were to ask Charlie, he would probably say, I never said a harsh word to him. Actually, he's actually said those words. I never said a harsh word to him while we were married. So no, we didn't. That doesn't mean it was a great marriage, but we didn't, we didn't have a lot of arguments.
No conflict. So you didn't really, you did not, because you were raised in a family where you didn't see conflict with your parents, you didn't learn that. So if you had a situation with a person that saw conflict, or maybe their mother and father, one of them wanted to do something and the other one didn't want to do it, mm-hmm. then you would not see the resistance from the other parent. And so when you went to Bethel, and remember, morning worship was what, 6:30 in the morning?
Yeah, really early. I think it was 7, but it was like ridiculously early. Yeah.
And you're getting up before that time to go study?
And race, before that time.
Don't you think most women would
doesn't.
have been upset? Like, wait a minute, I'm not getting up at no 5 o'clock in the morning to go do
Well,
that. I mean, you know what I mean?
Well, I didn't do it a lot.
Okay.
But I guess I was just giving you an idea that this is, like, we did that more than we went to the movies. I'll say that. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, let's not, yeah, I did not do that every morning. But I guess I was just trying to give you an idea. This was, his personality was field service and study. Like, and we were young and we were living in New York and there were things we could have been doing. But he wasn't one to generate, like, recreational activities. It was all, like, kingdom interests, you know. So yeah, I didn't do that all the time, but I'm just saying that was his personality. This was the important thing. And so yeah, I guess I was just saying that to say that, yeah, I didn't complain because I was trying to do the right thing. And there is a chapter in the Choosing the Best Way of Life book that was called Submission to Authority That is Rewarding. And I found it at some point in my marriage. And I would pull that out and review why submission was so important a lot, okay? Especially toward the end, because, you know, I was like, this is part of God's arrangement, and this is why I should do it, and Jesus suffered so that I could, you know, I like had to like personally re-indoctrinate myself to do that. So it wasn't easy, but I thought that's what I thought that's what God wanted me to do. So I was like taking that seriously, you know.
When you and Charlie went your separate ways, what made you decide to stay at Bethel?
Well, I guess Bethel was the one thing in my life that I really was still happy about. You know, I mean, I really liked it there. I liked what I did. I liked the people I worked with. And I had a lot of support there. A lot of the women that I worked around, the office that I worked with. I mean, it wasn't, I guess, support in the form of, you know, yay Mariuca, not necessarily, you know, I don't know, but I felt good. It was like my family. So yeah, that was the thing I wanted to hold on to. I mean, I still felt like this is where God wants me to be, and I enjoy my work. And so I didn't want to change that, you know. Plus, I mean, I've been there at this point for about 7 years. I don't want to go through the trauma of a divorce, which it was traumatic. I mean, as mismatched as we may have been and whatever my social anxieties, I still wanted to retain the one thing in my life that was good. And instead of shaking it all up and going out there and also looking for a job, finding a place, rebuilding a whole life outside of Bethel, I wanted to stay there. And, you know, at that point, I probably still wanted to stay there for life. So yeah, I didn't want to leave there.
So Bethel kind of represented stability for you.
Yes, because I had made a life there at that point. You know, so with or without Charlie, I wanted to continue my life there.
Well, that's good, because I can only imagine being in your situation with him, and then you really didn't like Bethel, and then everything is like up in arms, and then you got to leave and be dealing with this relationship that ended. So I'm glad to hear that you did at least enjoy being there.
Yeah, staying there, I mean, I was in a fishbowl. I mean, obviously, it was like, now everybody knows like my personal life, and maybe the Bethel elders know it better than I do. At least they know what happened in that room, and I don't. So it was uncomfortable, you know, after that, especially initially, it was uncomfortable. Like my first time showing up there after that, it was uncomfortable. But still, I thought it was the lesser of the two evils, you know.
So then as time went on, what took place after, you know, your relationship with Charlie ended?
Well, that first summer after Charlie left, and after, you know, I you know, cried my tears and licked my wounds, but also there was like, for the first time since I'd been at Bethel, I could socialize the way I would socialize, which meant, you know, I went to a lot of parties and things, and whenever I was invited, you know, so here I am now, a single woman at Bethel, and whenever I was invited to, I went. And if I was invited to, hey, we're going to New Orleans, I went. So I did some traveling. I was at the beach every weekend. I remember getting a bigger television for my Bethel room and some speakers, and bought some music. And, you know, I just got to be me for that time period and enjoy living in New York City and enjoy meeting with my friends. So it was kind of like the summer of Mariuca, you know, that first, and I enjoyed it. And it was a much better existence at Bethel than the one that I had been under. I sometimes am a person that doesn't understand that I am not comfortable in a situation until I'm out of it. So at first I just cried and cried and cried, but then I kind of realized I'm less stressed now than I was when I was with Charlie. And so that was a good feeling to realize that, hey, I was feeling rather pushed down in this relationship and didn't really realize it until it was over. So yeah, the short answer would have been, I had some fun after that.
That is so good to hear. I'm so happy to hear that, to hear you say that. It's like, man, I'm glad that you rediscovered yourself. I'm glad that you had fun, and happy to hear that you reinvented yourself, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, keeping in mind in the framework of as much fun as a Bethelite can have, you know, in New York City. You know, I mean, obviously you can't even watch an R-rated movie, but, you know, for me, it was a huge, you know, time to just be myself and act as if I would act and not, you know, under a husband. So yeah, it was great. It was good after that.
Well, because you still thought this was the truth, because you didn't know,
Right.
you hadn't woke
I
up
didn't know
yet.
any better.
And
Right. I didn't know
so
any
to
better.
you thought it was the truth. You were at a place you wanted to be, and you got a chance to go explore different things to do in the city and be yourself. So you were, for all practical purposes, more normal in life, and than just being up under this man who wanted to go study and read and all that. And by the way, all that studying he was doing was probably him trying to make up for all the sinning he was doing, you know?
Yeah,
Sometimes
I
people
get it.
feel like that, you know?
Yeah, I believe that. He was trying to keep the monster within in check, but you can only do that for so long.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's not lost on me.
Yeah. So how much freedom did you have after Charlie before you met someone else?
How long? Like, I don't know, maybe a year or so. Yeah, and I think it's in the story too that, you know, I worked in the press room, which had, you know, 5 women and 100 and some odd men. My brother was one of the people that worked in the press room too, and so it was just it was like they were all my brothers, you know. So we would play cards, and, you know, I would go skating maybe, you know, just whatever they were doing. And it was a atmosphere where I just felt relaxed. I didn't feel like, you know, oh, these are potential guys that I would marry or anything. Like, I didn't even think about that. It was just, these are just the guys that I work with. We have fun together, you know. So anyway, yeah, so it was under that circumstance that I already knew Lewis. It wasn't like I just met him, but it was under that circumstance that the relationship, you know, shifted with Lewis. So.
Okay. So like a year after you and Charlie, you know, were divorced, then you and Lewis basically started dating?
It was a year and a half.
And so was he different than Charlie, or
oh
were they
yeah
about the same?
Yeah, he liked to get out and have fun, you know. So I think in the normal human way that the pendulum swings from one extreme to the other, you know, I wasn't interested in finding somebody that wanted to just do deep personal study, you know, all the time, or somebody that didn't want to go to a movie or go to the beach or something. I wanted to have fun, you know. So yes, he was a very nice guy, very much, you know, about doing things in Manhattan, getting out, visiting people. So it felt like a more balanced situation. He was quite a bit younger than me, about 6 years younger than me, and I initially just didn't even think of him as, you know, even when he kind of approached me, I was like, no, you know. But then he kind of grew on me, so, you know. So we ended up dating. I mean, I had heard through the grapevine that, like, people were just giving me time, but that there were guys in the wings that were, you know, that were like, okay, I'm gonna give her a little time, but then.
I'm sure there was a lot of brothers that was like, oh yeah, you know, but they didn't want to go in for the kill right away.
Right.
But this brother was like, yeah, I'm here. You said he was younger too.
We worked together. We played bid whist. We just did all this stuff. And I guess he just thought, hey, And,
Right.
my first mind was what I should have stuck with. But again, he grew on me. I can only blame myself, And then looking back, it was a bad decision. I think probably there were people at the time that thought it was a bad decision.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bad decision. I'll go with that. I'll take all the blame for it. It was a bad decision.
I think that you're right when it comes to the proximity,
Mm-hmm.
because I cannot tell you how many people that got married because they were out in field service a lot together.
Oh yeah.
And the people that may be watching and listening to this podcast, they can relate to that.
Yeah, I've talked about this so much with so many ex-witnesses that I know now. And, what kind of training do we really get? What kind of insights does the Watchtower give you about how to choose a spouse? How is it that we think we can choose a spouse based on talks the person gives, or how spiritual their comments are, or shared spiritual goals? What about what you like? What about your personalities, and if they actually mesh? So this idea of these spiritual things are how you've got a good spouse. That's like leaving out most of the picture of how you choose a spouse. So, I feel like we're just doomed to failure from jump. You're just doomed because you think, oh, I understand what makes a good spouse. And if there are any good marriages there, it's just happenstance, that you, or at least you were smart enough to figure out this person needs to be compatible with me in more ways than what's going on at the Kingdom Hall. I feel like you are kind of doomed to failure because you're not given the common sense tools to know how to pick a spouse. Yeah, this going out in service together, and this is why, hey, I like that presentation, or whatever, or just because you're spending so much time together, you decide to get together. That's not how to make a good marriage. I know that now, but 22-year-old and 32-year-old Mariuca didn't know this,
It's learning.
Yeah.
It's looking back, and it's too bad that you got to waste your life with a person that you really shouldn't have been with to begin with.
Exactly.
All to realize, oh my God, if I would have had this information that I have now, I could have probably met the love of my life and been where I needed to be.
Yeah.
But that brings us up to the current situation. So you want to tell us a bit about your life now?
Yeah, so, those that read the story will see that now I'm with Carl. And I initially met Carl at the same place that I worked where I met Charlie. He also worked there. He was quite a bit older than me, so he was just like one of the old dudes that worked there. But without telling the whole, how we got together, which is the subject of the story, I have a great relationship now. I have a relationship that even I can't believe that, I've been in for the last 13 years with a really just genuinely good person that just wants the best for me, and I want the best for him. We both walked away from the organization at the same time, which was good from the standpoint of that we got to shore each other up as we went through that transition. Because, especially for me, because my whole family was in, I had a very difficult time at first with shunning. Even though that's going to happen, you understand, but still going through it is, more than an ocean. And to kind of go through transitioning from being in a high control religion to thriving in the outside world, that took a number of years. But to be with somebody that understands it and is willing to hash it out ad nauseum, all of the ups and downs of it. And then for me to be there to help him as he went through the guilt, I guess, that he experienced as having served as an elder for so many years and feeling bad about giving just what he now knows to be horrific advice to people that came to him for advice, feeling guilt about how he raised his daughters in it and how their lives maybe could be different now. I could be there to hear that. He could be there to hear my troubles, especially specifically about shunning. And it's worked out well for us. Not to say that we didn't also have professional therapists, because we did, And that helped as well, because we didn't want to be the kind of people that just just to spin our wheels endlessly about being in the witnesses and not moving forward. And we've been out now for 13 or 14 years now, so it's been quite a while. And I feel very far removed from it now, and it's a good thing. And we have our lives on the outside. We have our art careers. Carl, in particular, he just came home from an artist residency at the McDowell Colony in New Hampshire. He was there for about 6 weeks, and he's just doing really well. He's working on a graphic novel. He should be signing with an agent in the next upcoming weeks. And we've just enjoyed rebuilding a new family, a new community, and just being free to explore whatever we want to explore. It's funny when we think back to, like, let's say the first year that we were out. We probably watched every R-rated movie we ever wanted to watch, like the whole time we were witnesses. Like, I mean, and there was just so much that we wanted to take in that we had missed out on. It was just fun just to have that freedom to be ourselves, to do whatever it is that we want to do. And really, we're interested in filmmaking, we're interested in art. I'm enjoying my work with nonprofit organizations here. Here in Detroit, the Scarab Club is one that I'm, very dedicated to. We have whole new lives, and are we still affected by our time in the witnesses? Of course. I mean, I don't think that's ever going to go away. But it's just been an adventure and fun to understand that you're on this earth. You're able to do what you want. You give back to your community. You do what you feel as an individual will enrich yourself and enrich your community. And it just is so fulfilling, and it's great not to feel repressed and suppressed. And Carl will say that I'm the head of the family. I don't believe in heads, but I like that he's not still laboring under the ideas that we had when we were in the witnesses. And it's just been wonderful. I mean, has every moment been just a dream? No, I mean, this is real life, and there are real life issues that come up. So I don't want to give the impression that it's just, but by and large, I mean, I would not trade this life that I have now for anything.
Now, you mentioned that you're in the arts and he's working with graphics. You've got IMDb credits. How did you end up getting into the
into
movie?
Like acting?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so like I said, Carl and I are interested in filmmaking. So we watch a lot of movies, particularly noir films. We're like very interested in film. That was like right away something that we picked up on, that we both are into. We first started watching films, we just wanted to see them. Now we look at them from the standpoint of filmmaking and set design and just everything, the look of it. And in Detroit, there was this monthly film screening called the Mitten Movie Project. And so we started going to this, with a view of becoming filmmakers. The nice thing about this film project was you saw independent films that were made locally, and then the filmmakers would get up after the screening, and you could ask them any questions about how they made it, how much it cost, what camera they made. And so it was just such a good program, because the filmmakers were very generous with their being open about what they did. And so you got to learn what was right about it, what was wrong about it. You got to learn a bunch of things, but you also got to meet a lot of people that were filmmakers. And so in the course of being there, one of the filmmakers told me, I would like you to be in one of my films. He says, I know, can you act? I says, I don't know if I can, I've never done it before. But he said, I have a role I think I'd like you to do. Don't stress about it. Either you can or you can't. If you can't, no problem, I'll get somebody else. So, of course, like on one hand, it's like no stress, but on the other hand, hey, I want to succeed. I don't want to, mess this up. So I did end up, working with him in one of his films, which led to a few other of his films. And then since then, I've also been in a documentary that was filmed locally that was about racism. And so kind of, I think that film screening that we went to just kind of put us in contact with a bunch of local filmmakers. So just as a consequence of being in the community, that's how I ended up doing it. Wasn't what I aspired to. I'm trying to be behind the camera always, but it was fun. I was up for the challenge. And I found that I particularly like playing roles that aren't anything like me. So I did have a role that was kind of like a Pam Grier role from back in the day. So in order to like get the attitude, that I needed, I watched like 2 seasons of Bad Girls Club, which really is like the worst. But I mean, it was fun. It was just research, So anyway, I like the challenge of it. So that's how I ended up having IMDb credits.
That sounds like a lot of fun. And you said that you're on the board of several nonprofits.
Yes.
What kind of stuff do you do with the nonprofit?
Well, the Scarab Club is a local arts organization that's been around since near the turn of the last century. And, I think when I first learned about it, I was a little hesitant to even go because I just had an idea that it might be kind of stuffy. But then Carl decided he wanted to go because they were having sketch sessions and he wanted to do some sketching, and they had a photography club. So that was our introduction to it. And that first time we went, he ran into an old schoolmate of his who was very prominent in the Detroit art community. So we ended up just becoming really involved with it. What I do, I'm on the board, I serve as the secretary, which is, very in tune with what I do. Out of my day job, I'm a legal secretary. I don't know, I was asked to be on the board, and I think I hesitated at first, but Carl said, why not? You have something to add. Initially, my response was, oh, no, but then I ended up doing it maybe with a little nudging, and then I find I enjoy it, and I guess that's the only reason how I would know if I would enjoy it or not. The Scarab Club is just something that I'm passionate about, and I want to make it more accessible. I don't want people like me to think that, oh, that's not something that, a place where I would be welcome. So I guess my motivation to be involved on the board level was to make sure that accessibility is there. So another nonprofit is called the Original Willing Workers Society. It started in 1887 in Detroit. And while it's rather small right now, it is an actual charity that helps people that are underprivileged. And it started when Blacks first started moving up to Detroit, from the South. And these were established Blacks that were already here, and they wanted to help, So I was very intrigued by the organization. I have family members that have been in it for generations, and that's how I got involved with that one. So my motivation too was when I was a witness, I always wanted to help. I always wanted to donate, and we were told not to, and it just felt wrong. Why, if there are people in need, why is the only thing that I can give them a tract or Bible knowledge when they're hungry or they need clothes or they're whatever? So I think it was a pet peeve of mine when I was a witness. So I think I couldn't wait to, just as much as I was wanting to watch the movies that I couldn't watch, I also couldn't wait to be involved in giving because it just felt like what you're supposed to do as a human being on this planet, So anyway, that was my motivation.
That is awesome. That is so awesome because we have a lot of people that email us and they say, can you please tell us some positive experiences about people that left? Because everybody just has a sad story. But then I know there's people that left that are doing way more than just the things or thinking about the things that they did as a witness.
Yes.
And the other thing I meant to ask you was when you left Bethel after you had left your second marriage, how did you get work?
There was a progression. So when I first left Bethel, I still was with Lewis. And, most people were encouraging me to pioneer because, hey, now I left Bethel, I have a husband that can go to work, I should pioneer. But I've always been pretty practical minded, and I thought, we have nothing. We don't have a house yet. We don't have a car, not even one car. I'm going to work because why wouldn't I? We need to build up some money. So I started working right away. When I came home, I think initially because I was still a witness at that point, I just tapped into my contacts, my witness contacts, and there was somebody that was a recruiter, and I was able to get a job that way. And then later, I'm trying to think. Later, I think my dad helped me get a job. We both had jobs at Ford for a while. But, long story short, I think I started to worry that, well, this marriage with Lewis is suffering, and perhaps I'm, being materialistic, and, we're both working. The witnesses like to bring out the double income, no kids situation isn't good. So I thought, if my marriage is not doing well, and here we are both, working, maybe I should quit this good paying Ford job and do something else. Yep. So I did. So I quit, and that's when I ended up getting into doing what I do now, because my sister did it, and a firm was willing to hire me because I had years of secretarial experience when I was at Bethel. They were willing to hire me and train me in that legal secretary work, because on the basis of my sister, because they liked her and they knew that if I'm her sister, I'd be good. So yeah, so my initial contacts were the witnesses that I knew, and that's how I ended up getting back in the work field. But at that time, Detroit had a lot of jobs. It was a different economy than it was in later years, when it was very hard to get a job. So I've been fortunate that way to be able to always find work. So happy about that.
So you really did do a good job by landing on your feet.
Yes. And
despite all that you had been through.
Yes, because again, I'm practical minded. Hey, you got to survive. I think the problem that I had, and it's in the story, when I got sick for that few years, this was after the marriage to Lewis. When I got sick that one year and I didn't work for 4 months, that was trying. Because I did feel like, oh my goodness, I have to get well, because who's gonna take care of me? There's nothing in the organization, and they don't care that you were at Bethel for 10 years or whatever. You better take care of yourself, because there's no social programs and the witnesses that are going to help you get on your feet. It's, so that was trying. That was a trying period. That did help me to see that, witnesses are more involved with their preaching and their organizational activities than helping each other. That was one thing that was eye-opening for me, and also helped me to see that if I wasn't really feeling the organization anymore, if I wasn't really thinking this is the way I wanted to live anymore, I'm only losing this organizational structure and the people in it, but not this system that was going to help me in my time of need. You know what I'm saying? So I think it helped me to kind of correctly assess what I would be leaving, and to be okay with leaving it, knowing that I would probably find more support outside of it. And I did. I was amazed. I did. Carl went to a number of churches after we left, and I was interested in seeing, what social programs were in these churches, and I just loved seeing all the work those churches were doing in helping their communities. Now, I didn't want to necessarily join, or didn't believe what they were saying, but I just thought, wow, what they're doing in the community is wonderful. As opposed to in the witnesses here, I kind of fell flat on my face, and there's nothing to help you. You're just on your own, which, with all the millions of dollars that they have, I couldn't understand. How is it that you're just on your own? That's it. Great knowing you. Great for all the years of service you did. You better get your stuff together and get it. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's what happened. So.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, what about you guys now? Are you guys attending? Now, you said he visited churches, but you don't belong to a religion or anything now?
On paper, I might belong to a church. I think, I really, it's something how I had never experienced like a choir, and going to a black choir, a church with a black choir and everything. And I'm not going to say that I didn't go up and go to an altar at some point in time. So like on paper, I might actually belong to a church, but I'm not an active member in any religion. And, it took a while for me to get out of this mindset that you must believe every word of the group that you're involved with, or else, so I did start to realize that I can go to a church and I can hear what they're saying, and I can believe like part of it, or agree with part of it and not agree with part of it. And that's like perfectly normal. That's okay. But I was not searching as much as Carl was. But I did kind of attend with him sometimes. And now we're not actively involved in any religious organization. And for me personally, and I know I am not at all judgmental, I think whatever is good for a person is great. But for me personally, I get inspiration and I feel uplifted spending a day in a museum, in an art museum or something, because there's something about seeing works of art that just inspires me, makes me feel connected, to the universe. So I don't know, maybe I landed somewhere a little more, less organized and more like, I don't know. I don't know how to describe what my beliefs are, and they're kind of constantly shifting. I'm not very dogmatic about what I believe, but I'm kind of shaping them as I experience things. So I do have beliefs, but no, we don't. Neither of us belongs to a religious organization, but we do have organizations and even specific churches that we will donate to because we believe in what they're doing. We believe in especially their social programs.
But you know what? Once you leave the religion, the Jehovah's Witness religion, and you go back into a church, it feels like you're back at the Kingdom Hall all over again, because you got this organizational structure, you got the people that have the titles, and you've got the hierarchy, and
right.
So it kind of reminds me of that.
Right, it does, but yeah, I will go listen to a choir though, because wow. And I love beautiful church buildings, so I found that out, that wow, when you're not sitting in just a hall and you've got this music, it's very, very inspirational. I do, like, I feel like, wow, I missed that my whole life, and something within me was touched, deep within me was touched by the beauty and splendor of that spectacle. But again, to like actually become involved in an organization, in their hierarchy and all that. No, I mean, I only have so much time, and I already have, it's already filled up between a day job and, nonprofit and our art. Yeah, I just don't have time to be involved in that.
Right. Now, if you had an individual or individuals that wanted to get some advice, they're going to the Kingdom Hall, they left the Kingdom Hall, and they just need somebody to help them, what type of advice would you give them about relationships and about the information that they may be learning about on the internet?
I would say use your own good common sense. I would say steer toward advice from people that seem very balanced and that have good outcomes, because the proof is in the pudding, There's so much advice out there, and there's so many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses out there. And, I feel for each and every one of them. I mean, many of the stories are just they break your heart. I have a lot of compassion and empathy for that. But for the person that's just getting out, there's so much to grab their attention. But I would say steer toward what calls to you. I think we're not used to, as witnesses, kind of feeling from within what makes sense to us, what calls to us as an individual, because we're not all wired the same way. The same person or the same platform doesn't appeal to all of us. So I would say kind of go with what feels right to you, be balanced, and just know that you're doing the right thing by pulling away from that organization, because anything that stifles who you are, your creativity, your common sense is not good for you. Even if you think, oh, this is great, ultimately it's not good for you, because you're living a life that's not even yours, and you want to reclaim your life as soon as you can, as early and as soon as you can, and just, you're going to make mistakes along the way, but it needs to be your life. You need to take ownership of it and just find whatever makes sense to you, and then go with that and live that.
And what about people that may be depressed or experiencing anxiety? Would you recommend that they seek help from a therapist?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that I know with my experience in being a witness, they really downplay the role of professionals in helping us, and you were steered toward elders, but there's no substitution for professional help in these circumstances. And you'd be surprised how many therapists have already experienced dealing with witnesses. Even active witnesses, because to be honest, both Carl and I had therapists when we were still witnesses. We didn't talk to everybody about that because we know that it might be looked down upon. So you'd be surprised that there might be witnesses that you know that are already in therapy. But definitely there's no substitute for having a good therapist to help you work through it, because there's, what you're dealing with is post-traumatic stress. And you need professional help in order to deal with it. And even if you think you don't need professional help, I bet if you asked somebody that was knowledgeable around you, they might say otherwise. So that would be my advice to anyone coming out of the witnesses, that seek professional help. It doesn't have to be a long-term thing. Even on the short term, see someone, try to find someone that has experience in dealing with this. If they don't, there are organizations that will help help therapists to understand what it is for people like us that come out of these organizations, and then they can help us to get on our feet and live our own lives. Okay.
So thank you so much, Mariuca, for being on the Struggles of Jehovah's Witness Women. We are very happy that you took some time out of your busy schedule to tell your story.
Thanks for having me. This was really a lot of fun.
Be sure to click on the link in the description of this podcast so that you can read more about Mariuca and her husband, Carl. This has been Lady C. Thank you so much for being in our audience.
If you've been in the struggle and want to appear as a guest on our show, email us at info@criticalthinker101.com. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Critical Thinkers.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.